What would you do if the home you just moved into whispered of buried secrets beneath your feet? Would you ignore the smell, or dig into a horror far older than the walls around you? This is a fictional story. Any resemblance to real people, places, or events is purely coincidental. All characters and locations are entirely made up for storytelling purposes. If you're drawn to true crime-inspired stories, psychological suspense, and jaw-dropping plot twists, don't forget to, like if you're hooked from the start, subscribe for the full 15-part series, comment below. What would you do if you found a barrel under your floor? The Harper family arrived at 4:27 p.m. on a cloudy Friday afternoon. Their gray SUV rolled slowly up the long gravel driveway, crunching over loose stone, leaving behind the humming chaos of downtown Pittsburgh for the rolling countryside of western Pennsylvania. To Emily Harper, the house looked like a fresh start, her third in 5 years, but this time it felt different. The air smelled cleaner here, the trees thicker, the silence deeper. "Is this it?" asked Noah, her 8-year-old son, pressing his face to the window eyes, scanning the wide wraparound porch and the 2 stories of whitewashed wood behind it. "This is it," Emily said with a hopeful smile. "Home sweet home." James, her husband, pulled the SUV to a stop and leaned forward on the steering wheel, staring at the house with cautious optimism. "Doesn't look as bad as I expected." Emily narrowed her eyes playfully. "Thanks for the support," James chuckled. "I just mean, it has character." The house did have character, the kind born of age and neglect. Built in 1914, it had been empty for nearly 7 years after the previous owner mysteriously vanished, leaving the place in foreclosure limbo. The Harpers had gotten it at a price that bordered on suspicious, but they needed out of the city and their money didn't stretch far anymore. Emily stepped out first. The porch creaked under her weight, the sound sharp in the country quiet. She ran her hand along the railing, noting the chipping paint and the scent of old wood. Noah was already running through the yard, chasing invisible creatures. Inside the house was musty but solid. The air smelled faintly of mildew and dust, but Emily had expected worse. Hardwood floors stretched across every room, worn smooth by time. The kitchen was large but dated white tile counters, a cracked porcelain sink, and a linoleum floor patterned like 1980s wallpaper. Still, it had charm. They spent the first night sleeping on air mattresses in the living room, eating pizza on moving boxes, and pretending it was a grand adventure. It was the first night in months that Emily didn't wake with a headache. The smell showed up the next morning. At first it was subtle, something sharp sour, barely noticeable, unless you stood near the wall between the living room and kitchen. Emily wrinkled her nose. "Do you smell that?" James paused mid-sip of his coffee. "Smell what?" She walked to the center of the floor and inhaled. "Like something rotting." He joined her, bent down, and sniffed near the vent. "Maybe it's a dead mouse in the ducts," he offered. "Maybe," she said, unconvinced. But over the next few days, the smell grew stronger. It clung to the air, especially in the late afternoon, when the sun streamed through the western windows. It seeped into their clothes, their hair. Noah even complained his backpack smelled like old cheese and trash. Emily tried candles, baking soda, vinegar bowls. Nothing worked. By day 6, the smell was unbearable. James stood in the living room, arms crossed, staring at the floor like it had personally offended him. "I think we need to check under there," he said finally. Emily blinked. "You mean under the floor?" He nodded. They called a local handyman, Rick Dobson, an old wiry man with skin like leather and a permanent scowl. He arrived the next morning with tools in a beat-up red truck. "You said the smell's coming from here," he asked, tapping his boot on the wooden planks. James pointed to the far end of the living room where the boards felt slightly warmer, almost damp beneath bare feet. Rick crouched, pried at the boards, and sniffed. "Yeah, something's off." It took him an hour to lift 4 planks. What lay beneath was unexpected, a layer of old concrete, smooth but uneven, poured directly over the dirt. "That was odd," Rick muttered. "Why would anyone pour concrete under floorboards?" He chipped at it with a hammer. After a few sharp blows, a small crack opened, and then the smell hit them all at once. It was like a punch to the face, raw, decay, old blood, something sickly sweet and ancient. Emily gagged. Noah, standing nearby, covered his nose and backed up. James whispered, "Jesus Christ." They called the police. Detective Marcus Lang arrived by mid-afternoon, his unmarked cruiser stirring dust as it rolled to a stop. He was mid-40s, African-American, calm-eyed, with a face that looked permanently skeptical. "You're the new homeowners?" he asked. Emily nodded. "We just moved in a week ago." Rick the handyman led them to the exposed hole. Lang crouched down, inspected the concrete, and sniffed the air once. "Yeah, that's not good." He radioed in for a forensic team. By nightfall, the floor was fully opened. 2 55-gallon steel barrels embedded in concrete were revealed. The barrels were sealed shut, but rust stained the sides and a thin, dark liquid oozed from a crack along the rim of one. Lang stood beside it, arms crossed. "We'll need to take this slow. No one touches these until the coroner's here." Emily clutched Noah close. Her hands trembled. James whispered, "What the hell is this?" Lang answered without looking at them. "Let's hope it's not what I think it is." The barrels were removed the next day, transported under heavy security to the Allegheny County Forensic Facility. The Harpers were told to vacate the house until the scene was cleared. They moved into a motel 3 miles away, paid for by the county, but the unease followed them. Emily couldn't sleep. Her dreams were filled with scratching sounds beneath the floor, with muffled cries, with concrete turning to blood. 2 days later, Detective Lang returned. He sat across from the Harpers in the motel lobby, a small notepad in hand. "The barrels contained human remains," he said, voice level. James let out a breath. Emily went cold. Lang continued. 2 bodies, 1 male, 1 female, both wrapped in plastic encased in concrete. The condition of the bodies suggests they've been there for several years, possibly more than 10. Emily whispered, "Who would do something like that?" Lang looked at them both. "That's what I intend to find out." He paused, then added, "You ever hear of a man named Russell Blythe?" James frowned. "No. Should we—" Lang flipped a page in his notebook. He was the last owner of the house. Bought it in 2009, disappeared in 2016, no forwarding address, no next of kin. The place went into foreclosure shortly after. Emily blinked. "You think he's the one who put the bodies there?" Lang didn't answer. "We're running DNA on both victims. If we get an ID, that'll help. But I need you to tell me if you find anything unusual, diaries, photos, old boxes in the attic, whatever. Anything connected to Blythe?" James nodded. "Of course." Lang stood, gave them his card, and left. That night, while Emily tried to sleep, James sat in the motel chair, scrolling his phone. He looked up the name Russell Blythe. Nothing came up, no obituary, no news articles, no photos. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere deep in his chest, he felt it a cold, creeping certainty. They had stepped into someone else's nightmare, and it was just beginning. The motel walls were too thin for secrets. Emily heard every sigh James made from the other side of the bed. The digital clock on the nightstand glowed 2:03 a.m. in a pale red haze, and somewhere upstairs, someone was watching television too loud. She lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling above her, thoughts swirling in slow circles. Her home, their home, was now a crime scene. The place where she dreamed of baking cookies and painting walls with her son now reeked of formalin and forensics. Her stomach churned every time she thought of the barrels. The smell, thick and sticky, clung to her memory like smoke. She knew she wouldn't be able to walk barefoot on those floors again. James was already up when she slipped out of bed at dawn. He sat at the table near the window, hunched over his laptop, the screen casting a cold glow across his tired face. Anything she asked, pouring herself a cup of stale motel coffee. He shook his head slowly. No sign of Russell Blythe. I tried public records, real estate databases, social media, nothing. It's like he vanished before the internet ever met him. Emily took a slow sip. What if he changed his name or left the country? James sighed. Could be. Or he's buried somewhere in the backyard. Neither of them laughed. Later that morning, they got a call from Detective Lang. Can you meet me at the house in an hour? He asked. We've cleared the scene. I want to show you something. Emily's heart raced. Did you identify the victims? Lang hesitated. Not yet. But we found something upstairs you need to see. When they arrived, the old house looked the same on the outside, calm, neutral, indifferent. But the interior had shifted. The wooden floor was now a gaping wound. Jagged edges revealed the dark void where the barrels had been unearthed. Forensic powder still dusted the baseboards. Lang stood near the staircase holding a pair of gloves and a plastic evidence bag. I had a team check every inch, he said. Attic, too. We found this stuffed inside the air duct above the master bedroom closet. Inside the bag was a small leather-bound journal, edges frayed and pages curled from age. Lang unzipped it carefully, revealing a name scrawled on the inside cover in uneven blue ink. R. Blythe. Emily reached for it instinctively, but Lang raised a hand. Gloves. Everything's still evidence. James leaned over to read the first few lines. July 2nd, 2015. I didn't mean for it to happen. God knows I didn't. But she was screaming and I panicked. I swear I only meant to scare her. Emily felt her skin crawl. Lang flipped through more pages, disjointed entries, erratic handwriting, broken thoughts. The basement smells now. No matter what I use. Lime, bleach. It still comes back. I hear her sometimes when I sleep. I think I might be losing it. If someone ever finds this, I'm sorry. Lang looked up. It's not a confession in the legal sense, not unless we match this to handwriting samples or fingerprints, but it's close. Emily whispered. There was more than one victim. Lang nodded. At least 2. Possibly 3. The medical examiner found something strange in the concrete between the barrels, like bone fragments, but smaller. Could be animal, could be human. We're not sure yet. James stepped back from the journal, hands on his hips. So what now? Lang closed the bag carefully. We're pulling property records, trying to trace any aliases tied to Russell Blythe. This guy was off-grid. No employment records, no driver's license renewals, no utilities in his name since 2016. Either he's dead, or he never existed under that name to begin with. Emily's gaze wandered up the staircase. I want to go through the rest of the house, she said suddenly. If he lived here for that long, maybe he hid more. Lang hesitated. Technically, it's your property again. Just be careful. If you find anything, don't touch it. Emily nodded, and together she and James ascended the creaking stairs. The upper floor still carried the same musty stillness as the day they arrived, but now it felt darker, like the house was holding its breath. They began in the master bedroom. Emily opened the closet door, its hinges groaning, and stared at the narrow vent shaft where the journal had been found. James tapped on the walls around it, listening for hollow spots. Check the drawers, he said. People hide stuff in the weirdest places. While James inspected the built-in cabinets, Emily wandered into the hallway. There was a linen closet at the far end, tall, narrow, with louvered doors. She opened it. Towels, dusty sheets, a cracked bar of soap. And then, something caught her eye. Behind the lowest shelf in the very back was a small rectangular panel. It looked like it didn't belong. The wood was a slightly different color. She dropped to her knees and ran her fingers along the edges. It shifted slightly when she pressed it, revealing a tiny recess behind. Inside was a VHS tape. No label, just black plastic, dusty and cold. James, she called out, come here. He appeared seconds later, brow furrowed. What is it? She held it up. He stared. You've got to be kidding me. They didn't own a VHS player, but Detective Lang managed to track one down at the precinct. That afternoon, they sat together in a small conference room at the police station, the tape loaded into an old television cart from the evidence room. The image flickered to life. Static. Then, a man late 30s standing in what looked like the kitchen of the Harper house. Tall, pale, wearing a tank top and jeans. Short, dark hair. Eyes that twitched every few seconds like he was watching shadows. He spoke directly to the camera. If someone's watching this, I guess I'm either gone or finally lost it. James and Emily exchanged a glance. My name is Russell Blythe, or at least that's what I've been using. Doesn't matter anymore. I messed up. I messed up bad. He paced the kitchen, running his hands through his hair. It wasn't supposed to go this far. She was just a tenant, just a girl renting the upstairs room. But she got curious, started asking questions about the basement. I told her to drop it, but she didn't. He stopped pacing and stared at the lens. Now she's part of it, just like the others. Emily pressed a hand to her mouth. I know what I've done. I know there's no forgiveness for this. But if someone finds this, please just bury me deep. Don't let me wake up in this house again. The screen cut to static. Lang stopped the tape. The room was silent. After a long moment, Emily whispered, How many are in there? Lang shook his head. We don't know. Yet. James leaned forward. And how the hell did this guy just vanish? No neighbors reported anything. No one came looking. Lang exhaled slowly. That's what we're trying to find out. We've reached out to missing persons databases. We're now looking at every tenant who might have lived here between 2009 and 2016. He glanced down at his notes. There's something else. We found a name scratched into the underside of one of the floorboards near the barrels. Faint but legible. He turned the notepad around. It read AMYG. Emily's voice trembled. Amy. Lang nodded. We're checking every missing Amy G reported in the state over the last 20 years. The room felt colder now, as if something unseen had crept in through the cracks of the old story and made itself at home in the present. The name haunted Emily through the night. Amy G. 2 words scratched into rotting wood, buried beneath concrete, hidden beneath a house that was supposed to be their fresh start. Emily lay awake in the motel bed, staring at the ceiling while Noah slept beside her, peaceful and unaware of the darkness their new home had unearthed. James was pacing again. He did that now not nervously but methodically, like someone solving a puzzle with pieces still covered in dust and blood. At 3:12 a.m. he stopped. I found something, he said quietly. Emily sat up. What? He turned his laptop around. On the screen was a blurry scan of a missing persons flyer from 2013, archived on a local subreddit dedicated to cold cases. The girl looked about 19, auburn hair, round face, freckles. The name underneath the photo read, Amy Garrison, missing. Since August 2013, Pittsburgh, PA. Last seen leaving her off-campus apartment near the University of Pittsburgh. No signs of struggle, no credit card activity, no cell phone pings, just gone. Emily leaned closer. She'd be about 29 now, if she's still alive. James clicked through other posts. There's a thread here with people speculating she might have been hitchhiking out of town. But one comment caught my eye. He scrolled down and highlighted a comment buried in a sea of noise. My cousin rented a room in the countryside from some guy named Russ around that time. Think the place was near Zelianople or Harmony. She moved out after only 2 weeks, said the dude gave her the creeps. Always smelled like bleach. James looked up. That's close to our house. Emily's stomach turned. They printed the flyer. The next morning, Emily brought it straight to Detective Lang at the station. He nodded when he saw the image. We're already looking into her. DNA from the remains is still processing. If we get a maternal or sibling match in CODIS, we'll know. Emily pointed at the picture. The initials match. The timeline fits. What else do you need? Lang didn't answer at first. He closed the folder gently and looked at her with something like caution. There's a detail you don't know yet, he said. One of the victims in the barrel, the woman was found with something clutched in her right hand, a pendant necklace. He slid a photo across the table. The pendant was shaped like a silver hummingbird dulled by time and concrete. It was stained but intact. Emily stared. What does that mean? Lang pulled out the original missing persons flyer again. Look at her neck. In the picture, Amy Garrison was wearing the same hummingbird necklace. Emily's breath caught in her throat. So it's her. Lang nodded. It's highly probable. We're waiting for confirmation, but the odds are strong, and we think Russell Blythe either killed her or covered up her death. Emily's mind reeled. She barely noticed when Lang added, We also found a second pendant matching hidden under a loose tile in the upstairs bathroom. Same bird, different chain. James, who had joined them midway, said softly, You think there was another girl? Lang looked grim. Yes, or someone she cared about. They left the station in silence, the flyer clutched between Emily's fingers. That afternoon, she insisted they return to the house. The crime scene tape was gone. The floorboards had been replaced with temporary plywood. The air still smelled faintly of bleach and something deeper, something rooted in the walls themselves. Noah stayed behind with a neighbor. Emily and James walked through the rooms like strangers. In the guest bedroom upstairs, she opened the closet door and froze. There was a small Polaroid photo tucked into the doorframe, almost invisible from a standing position. She bent down and gently removed it. 2 girls, both around 20. One was clearly Amy, the same face from the flyer. The other had darker skin, a bright smile, long braids. On the bottom, scribbled in blue ink, "Me and Jess. Summer 2013. The creepy house." James leaned over her shoulder. "Jess." Emily's eyes narrowed. 2 pendants, 2 girls, 2 victims. The puzzle pieces were starting to slot together. They brought the photo to Lang the next morning. He confirmed that they had already reached out to Amy Garrison's family and were attempting to track down any friends or roommates named Jessica from that time. "You're doing more than some of my officers," he admitted. Emily shook her head. "This isn't just about curiosity anymore. We're living in their tomb." Lang studied her for a moment. "You ever hear about the man who lived there before Blythe?" Emily blinked. "What?" Lang opened a new folder. The property was originally owned by a man named Ronald Ely. Bought it in 1993. Sold it to Blythe in 2009. Ely was arrested in 2004 for assaulting a teenage tenant. Charges dropped. Not enough evidence. Moved away. Died in 2012. James frowned. "So you're saying this place was cursed long before Blythe?" Lang didn't smile. "Some houses collect things. Bad memories. Bad men." Emily whispered. "We bought a graveyard." Lang leaned back in his chair. "And now you're the caretakers." Back at the house that night, Emily wandered alone into the attic. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light. Boxes lay stacked untouched by the forensic team. She opened one. Clothes, receipts, a box of VHS tapes. She froze. Not labeled, just numbered. 357. She grabbed one and turned it over. On the underside, scrawled in pen, "Amy, Room 2, August 2013. Her heart nearly stopped. The tapes weren't just recordings, they were logs. Surveillance. She ran downstairs, tape in hand, and called Lang. Within an hour, he arrived with a tech unit. They set up an old television in the living room, cables snaking across the floor. The screen flickered. The tape played. Amy sitting on a bed, talking on the phone, unaware she was being filmed. The angle was from inside a vent or light fixture. "Jesus Christ," James whispered. He filmed them. Lang's face darkened. All of them. The tape continued. Amy talking, laughing, turning off the light. Moments later, another girl entered Jessica. They talked, whispered, hugged. Then the screen cut out. No sign of Russell, no violence. Just 2 young women living in fear under surveillance in a house they should have never trusted. Lang stood. "We'll be checking every VHS tape in that box. There could be more victims." Emily felt sick. Her house had been an arena for someone's sick obsession, a recording studio of nightmares. Lang looked at them before he left. "I don't think Blythe was the only one involved," he said. "Someone had to teach him how to pour concrete, how to hide things, maybe even how to kill." Emily met his gaze. "Ronald Ely." Lang nodded once. "This story doesn't start with Russell Blythe. It starts before him. And maybe it still isn't over." The storm rolled in just after midnight. Rain tapped against the motel window like restless fingers. Emily sat cross-legged on the bedphone in hand, but her eyes weren't on the screen. They hadn't been for minutes. She just stared through the soft glow of the weather app, watching the lightning light up the distant hills beyond the window. James had fallen asleep on the pull-out couch with Noah exhausted after another long day at the precinct. The discovery of the surveillance tapes had spiraled the investigation into something bigger, not just a murder, but a pattern, a place, a method. Emily couldn't stop thinking about the footage, Amy brushing her hair, Jessica laughing in the mirror. Girls unaware they were being watched, studied. The camera always still, always waiting. There were 15 tapes in the box, 11 labeled, 4 marked only with numbers. Detective Lang had said something that haunted her. Someone was learning. These were rehearsals. At 1:07 a.m., someone knocked on the motel door. Emily flinched. She waited. Maybe she imagined it. Then came the knock again. Louder, slower, 3 distinct thuds. She rose slowly, quietly, slipping on her sweater, and approached the door. Through the peephole, she could barely see the hallway light had flickered out earlier that evening. But someone was standing there. Tall, motionless, a figure in shadow. Her throat tightened. She flicked the security latch and cracked the door slightly. Yes, she called through. The figure didn't respond. Instead, he held something up a yellow envelope, thick and warped from the rain. Emily's fingers trembled. "Who are you?" Still no response. He slowly knelt and slid the envelope under the door. Then he turned and walked away down the hallway, footsteps soft and uneven, like one leg dragged slightly behind the other. She didn't move until she could no longer hear him. Only then did she bend down, pick up the envelope, and lock the door behind her again. Inside were 3 photographs and a single folded sheet of paper. The first photo showed the Harper house, but not recently. The paint was chipped, the windows clouded. A dark sedan was parked in the driveway. The second photo showed a man, older, mid-60s, standing beside a different house, smiling stiffly with 2 younger boys. One of the boys looked eerily like a younger version of Russell Blythe. The third photo was blurry, taken at night through what looked like a car windshield. It showed Russell unmistakably, him standing beside an open trunk. Inside the trunk, a black garbage bag, shovel leaning nearby. The note was handwritten in rough script. "You're digging in the wrong place. It didn't start with him, and he's not done. Look up Clay Elridge. Ask about 1997. Ask about the girl in the well. Don't trust the house, it remembers." Emily's breath caught. Clay Elridge, 1997, a girl in the well. She read the words again and again. By sunrise, she was in Detective Lang's office. He studied the photos carefully, brows drawn low. "This guy in the middle," he said, tapping the second photo, "that's not Russell. But he looks related. Could be a father, maybe an uncle. I'll run it through the DMV facial match database." Emily laid the note in front of him. Clay Elridge. "Do you know that name?" Lang nodded slowly. He was a deputy, retired now, worked this area for decades, mostly small-time cases missing livestock teen DUIs. But in 1997, Emily asked. Lang's face shifted. "There was a girl that year, missing from a church camp, 15 years old, last seen hiking alone behind the bluff trail near Laurel Creek." Emily waited. Lang continued. "They never found her. But weeks later, a neighbor reported a horrible smell coming from an old sealed well near the edge of a cornfield. The girl's body was inside, wrapped in plastic, weighted with bricks." Emily swallowed hard. Was it investigated? Yes. But the scene was contaminated. Local boys had broken open the well days before the report, so the timeline was messy. Cause of death was blunt force trauma, but they couldn't determine if it happened before or after she went missing. And Clay Elridge handled the case. Lang nodded. It was one of his first solo investigations. Emily's voice was a whisper. Was Russell Blythe in the area back then? Lang looked at her. He would have been 15. There was silence. Emily finally said, "Then maybe he learned from someone." They drove to Clay Elridge's property just before noon. A long dirt driveway led to a wide ranch-style home flanked by pine trees. An old blue pickup sat parked under a rusted metal awning. Elridge answered the door in a white tank top, and Jean's eyes narrowed beneath heavy brows. "Detective Lang," he muttered. "Didn't expect you." Lang nodded. "Mind if we ask you a few questions?" Elridge eyed Emily suspiciously. "She with you?" "She owns the Harper house," Lang said plainly. Something flickered in Elridge's eyes. "You mean the concrete house?" Emily stepped forward. "Do you know what happened there?" Elridge didn't answer. Instead, he turned and walked back inside. Lang glanced at Emily, then followed. She stepped into the house, and was hit by the thick smell of cigar smoke and something older mildew, maybe, or regret. They sat in a living room full of trophies and dusty taxidermy. Elridge poured himself a glass of whiskey at noon and didn't offer any to them. Lang pulled out the photo from the envelope, the one with Elridge and the two boys. "You recognize this?" he asked. Elridge studied it for a moment, then exhaled through his nose. "That's me. That's my cousin Billy's boy. Russell." Emily's pulse raced. "You're related to him." "Not blood," Elridge muttered, "but close enough. He lived with us for a summer in '97, after his dad disappeared." Lang didn't miss a beat, and that was the same summer the girl went missing from camp. Elridge's jaw tensed. "She was just a stupid kid," he said finally, wandering alone in the dark. "She fell in with someone who wasn't right in the head." Emily whispered, "You mean Russell?" Elridge didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he said, "All I know is what I cleaned up." Lang's tone sharpened. "What do you mean, cleaned up?" "I mean," Elridge said, rising, "I took care of it before the others found out. That girl didn't deserve it. But he didn't know what he was doing. He was just a boy, scared, and he needed someone to help." Emily stared at him. "So you helped him kill her? And then you taught him how to bury it?" "I didn't say that." Elridge snapped. "I said I cleaned it up." Lang stood slowly. "You're going to need to come in for a statement." Elridge laughed low and bitter. "You think this ends with me, that house of yours, Miss Harper? It's not just a murder scene. It's a message. Something's wrong there. Always has been." He turned toward Emily. "You don't own that house. Not really. It owns you." Emily felt her chest tighten. Back in the car, Lang was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "If he's right, then Russell Blythe didn't start this story. He's just the most recent verse in a longer poem." Emily looked out the window at the trees rushing past. "The house has a memory," she said softly, "and it's still whispering." They returned to the house on a Thursday. The police had cleared their final forensic sweep. The plywood had been removed and replaced with temporary flooring, though the scars in the subfloor remained. Noah stayed with James's sister for the night, safe from the ghosts they couldn't quite name yet. Emily unlocked the front door slowly, half expecting the air to hit her like a wall again, that strange chemical stench, that undertone of something once alive, now stilled. But this time there was only silence. Dry wood, the scent of dust and bleach. Lang's words still echoed in her mind. "You don't own that house." "Not really, it owns you." She and James had decided to stay one night. Just one. To face it. To see it under their own roof again, not from the rearview mirror of motel life. In the kitchen, James opened a bottle of water, silent. Emily leaned on the counter. "You believe him, don't you?" "Who?" "Clay Elridge." James gave a tight nod. "Not everything, but enough. Enough to know Russell didn't act alone. Not in the beginning." Emily pulled the hummingbird necklace from her coat pocket, the second one, the one they found under the upstairs bathroom tile. She'd kept it instead of handing it over to evidence, and no one had asked. "I think this was hers," she said softly. "Jessica's." James glanced over. They had matching ones. "Like sisters, or something close." He nodded, but didn't respond. The silence stretched. Then Emily's gaze drifted to the wall behind the refrigerator. She stepped forward, tapping her fingers along the drywall, listening for echo. There was none. She turned to James. "Help me move this." It took a bit of effort. The old fridge groaned and scraped across the floor. Behind it, the wall was bare except for a single warped square where the paint didn't match the rest of the surface. James stepped forward, frowning. "Looks like something was patched over." He fetched a screwdriver and gently tapped the wall. It sounded hollow, but only in a tight rectangular frame. They looked at each other. "Get a box cutter," she said. James sliced through the painted drywall carefully. Dust puffed out, making Emily cough. Inside the wall was a narrow cavity, and inside that cavity, wrapped in waxed canvas, were several rolled blueprints. James pulled them out, unrolled one carefully across the dining table. Emily stared. It was the original design plans for the house, but not the version the county had on file. This one had additions, crude sketches in red pencil measurements, penciled in the margins, Certain rooms were labeled differently than on their paperwork. Most notably, there was a room X beneath the master bedroom, not on any public blueprint. A crawlspace, a bunker. James moved to the second blueprint. This one was even older, dated 1992. Still the same basic structure, but the names were different. One room was labeled observation, another cold chamber. Emily's skin prickled. Who the hell builds a cold chamber under a house in rural Pennsylvania? James was staring at a small note scrawled near the bottom corner of the second blueprint. It read, "Use reinforced concrete, 3 parts gravel, 1 part lime, silent, pour only. Emily whispered. Ronald Ely. James looked at her. He built this. Emily stared at the old beams above her head. It wasn't just a home. It was a project, a plan. They kept digging. In the basement, Emily found a loose panel behind the fuse box. Inside, a stack of Polaroids, not of people, but of objects. Belts, cuffs, duct tape, rolled up blue tarps, a white van with a crooked back bumper. They laid them all on the table. There were 13 photos in total. And at the bottom of the pile, the 13th photo was the clearest yet. Not a tool, not a vehicle. A girl, tied, gagged, her face twisted in terror, eyes open wide. James said nothing, just stepped back from the table like it was radioactive. Emily's mouth was dry. How many girls have disappeared in this town? James turned and walked to his laptop. He began searching. He started with a simple filter, female age 1425, missing within 50 miles of Zelienople, PA between 1992 and 2020. The list was longer than they expected. Too long. 17 cases. Only 5 had been closed. James narrowed it again, never found. No remains. There were 8. 8 missing girls, all within an hour's drive. All unexplained disappearances. Some from college campuses, one from a truck stop, another from a church group. No patterns, no connections except geography, except proximity, except them. Emily called Lang. He arrived 30 minutes later, grim as ever, and this time he brought an FBI liaison, a young agent named Sierra Ochoa, soft-spoken but sharp-eyed. They photographed the blueprints, collected the photos, the waxed canvas, the notes. Agent Ochoa stood in the center of the living room and slowly turned in a circle. "There's something about the construction," she said. "See how these walls are slightly uneven, not up to modern code. Whoever did this wanted specific dimensions for very specific purposes." Lang nodded, and the blueprint calls out, "Room X." They searched. Under the master bedroom, they pulled back the carpet and found an old sealed trapdoor beneath the floorboards. Metal brackets had been nailed into place. Someone didn't want it opened. They pried it loose. Below was a short concrete stairway, steep and narrow, descending into darkness. Ochoa went down first. Her flashlight beam cut through thick, stale air. Emily followed, heart-hammering. At the bottom, the space opened into a low concrete room, 10 by 12 feet. No windows, no air vents. One exposed bulb long since burned out. The floor was stained in places. Metal rings were bolted into the wall. A rusted drain sat in the middle of the floor. No furniture. Just a single thing on the far wall, a tally. Carved into the concrete, faint, primitive. Vertical lines grouped into 5s. 21 tallies. Emily stared. He kept count. Ochoa crouched near the drain. "This isn't just a cellar, it's a kill room." Lang's voice was low. "And we just found the tip of the iceberg." James stayed silent. Emily moved to the corner of the room. Something caught her eye, a small metal plate on the floor. She bent down. It was a bolted safe. Ochoa pried it open. Inside was a box wrapped in plastic. And inside the box, more photos. Dozens of them. Girls in cages, girls crying, girls no one ever looked for because no one knew where to look. And a small journal. Emily flipped it open. There were only a few entries. April 2nd, 1998. The first one screamed for 4 hours. October 19th, 2003. Better to keep the lights off. Screaming lessons faster. May 14th, 2013. Amy knew something. She was getting too close to the basement. Had to accelerate the plan. Emily dropped the book. Lang picked it up. His voice was hoarse. He documented everything. Agent Ochoa took it and slipped it into an evidence bag. Lang looked at Emily. This isn't just a murder case anymore. Emily whispered. It's a goddamn mausoleum. The house was no longer just a crime scene. It was a museum of madness. The FBI took over within 24 hours. Yellow tape spanned the front porch and forensic vans lined the street like quiet funeral guests. Neighbors peered from behind curtains. News vans began circling like vultures. Emily and James were instructed to stay away until the investigation allowed otherwise. They didn't fight it, but Emily couldn't sleep. Not at the motel. Not with the weight of the journal in her head. The final entry kept repeating in her thoughts like a curse. Amy knew something. She was getting too close to the basement. Had to accelerate the plan. Amy. Not just another victim. Not just another girl. Amy had figured something out. And she'd died for it. Lang called 2 days later. You need to come in, he said. We found something, but it's better if you see it in person. The FBI had set up a temporary operations center in an old elementary school gym. Inside corkboards were plastered with photos, maps, timelines. One board bore the words, House 21 in red marker, the unofficial name for the Harper property. Lang led them into a back room where Agent Ochoa stood beside a table covered in evidence bags. In the center sat a black leather-bound album, its pages filled with Polaroids, faces, victims, snapshots from hell. But it was the very last page that made Emily stagger. A single photograph, recent, taken from a distance. Her, standing in the backyard of the Harper house. The photo had been taken weeks ago, possibly before they found the barrels. Lang handed her a second photo, same angle, different time. This time it was Noah playing with a ball near the swing set. Ochoa spoke quietly. We think someone else was living near the house, watching, maybe even returning, Emily whispered Russell. Lang shook his head. The timestamps on the photos don't line up with when he disappeared. These were taken after he was presumed dead. James leaned forward. Then who the hell took them? Ochoa hesitated. Then she turned toward another board and pulled down a photocopy of a property deed. It was for a small patch of woodland half a mile behind the Harper house, sold in 1996, to a man named William R. Ely. Emily's eyes narrowed. Ronald Ely had a brother. Lang nodded. Twin. Died in a car crash in '98. But we did some digging. Turns out he wasn't declared legally dead until 2007 when the family finally filed. That's a long time to disappear. James said, You think he faked his death? Maybe Ochoa said, or maybe he just never left. They sent a team into the woods. What they found wasn't a house, it was a bunker. Underground, buried under pine needles and brush. Inside were tools, canned food, old surveillance gear, hundreds of VHS tapes and memory cards. And one wall covered in newspaper clippings, missing girls, local obituaries. One headline stood out. Remains of girl found in well linked to 1997 Case Cold Trail, New Hope. Emily stared at it. That's her, the one Clay Elridge cleaned up. Lang nodded. Her name was Clara Mason, 15. Her file was tagged unsolved but no foul play. We've reopened it. Ochoa flipped open a binder on the table. Inside were names, dates, notes scrawled in different handwriting. One note marked 2009 read, She cried when I cut her hair, said her sister would never recognize her. I told her she didn't need a sister anymore. James turned away sick, but Emily leaned in. There under 2009, the name was circled J. Silvers. Jessica. They had taken both girls. Amy and Jessica hadn't just lived there. They'd been chosen, conditioned, possibly by more than one person. Lang said, We believe the Ely brothers built the house as a containment site, a training ground. We're now operating under the theory that they used it together and later trained others. Like Russell James asked. Exactly. Emily's stomach turned. It was a legacy, a system. Ochoa nodded. And there's more. One of the notebooks referenced the 22nd. Emily's voice trembled. You mean the 22nd tally mark? Yes, Ochoa said. The room only had 21, but the journal has mention of a 22nd vessel that never made it to the basement. Lang stepped in. They buried her somewhere else. A different method, different purpose. Emily whispered, so there's still a body we haven't found. Ochoa didn't respond. Instead, she set down a small envelope. We got a tip this morning. An anonymous caller. Said to check the well behind the old Johnson farm. It's been dry for a decade. Lang said we're heading there now. You don't have to come. But Emily was already standing. She needed to know. They arrived at the Johnson farm in late afternoon. The well stood between two crumbling barns, overgrown and half collapsed. The wind howled softly through the broken slats. Inside the well, a narrow concrete shaft rusted ladder running down the side. A crew lowered a camera. The screen lit up dirt, debris, bones, and fabric. A scrap of yellow fabric. Emily's breath hitched. It's the same color as the dress in the photograph. The camera focused closer. There barely visible was a silver chain tangled in the dirt. A hummingbird pendant. Emily turned away, tears burning her eyes. Lang's voice was tight. We'll get DNA, but I think we just found Amy. No one spoke for a long time. Then James said what they were all thinking. Why her? Why take Amy and not kill her right away? Ochoa's voice was distant. Maybe she was the experiment. The one they tried to turn into the next Watcher, but she resisted. Lang looked at Emily, and maybe she died because she refused. Emily said nothing. She just stared into the well, imagining a girl fighting, screaming, clawing for air, and a man with no soul watching her disappear into the dark. Later that night, back at the motel, Emily pulled out the first photo again, the one of the backyard, the one that showed her standing alone near the swing set. She stared at the angle. The tree line behind her. The old fence post. And then she saw it. A face. In the background, barely visible. Behind the trees. A man watching. Not Russell, not Ronald. Someone else. Someone they hadn't identified yet. And in that moment, Emily realized something bone deep. The 20-second tally wasn't a victim. It was a warning. The motel was quiet that night, but Emily couldn't sleep. The photo sat on the table beside her, the one they had overlooked for days. The one with her in the foreground standing by the swing set. And in the trees behind her, almost invisible, unless you stared hard enough, was the face. She had enhanced it digitally on James's laptop, playing with contrast shadows brightness. The pixels were blurry, but the outline was unmistakable, a male figure. Long jaw, short hair, not quite clean-shaven, watching her from behind the fence, arms crossed. He wasn't moving. He wasn't running. He was waiting. Emily showed it to James. He stared speechless. That's not Ronald Ellie, he finally said. No, she agreed. And it's not Russell either. They emailed it to Lang. By morning, Lang had called back. His voice was sharper than usual. We ran facial comparison software. No hits in any official law enforcement database. But Ochoa did a soft search scraping social media security cams news footage. Emily's stomach dropped. You found him. Maybe. We found someone who looks a lot like him. In the background of a church group photo, taken last year in Ohio. James was already pulling up a map. How far? 75 miles west. Lang's voice dropped. And we found something else. That man, the one in the church photo, his name is Graham Ely. Emily froze. Another Ely, she whispered. Lang confirmed it. Youngest son of Ronald Ely. Changed his name after college. Graham Stetson now. No record of criminal behavior, but guess where he did his undergrad internship? Where James asked, but Emily already knew. Lang answered anyway. Zelienople Housing Authority. Worked directly under his uncle. On residential inspection projects. The Harper House included. It was starting to click together like rotting puzzle pieces. James muttered, Jesus Christ. Lang said he knew the house inside and out. Probably had a key. Probably visited while the place was on the market. Maybe even after you moved in. Emily's voice was dry. You think he took the photos? Lang didn't answer, which meant he didn't want to say yes but couldn't say no. That afternoon, Lang sent 2 agents to Graham's registered address, a small house in a quiet town near the state border. They didn't find him. What they found instead was disturbing. In the basement, a map of western Pennsylvania marked with dozens of red thumbtacks, each one labeled with a code. A key taped to the wall listed meanings. B21 barrel site, W well site, O observation post, R replacement. Emily didn't even ask what replacement meant. One of the markers sat right over her backyard, another over the woods behind Noah's school. Ochoa called that night. He was watching your son. Emily collapsed onto the bed, shaking. But there was more. Lang visited in person. He dropped a manila folder onto the motel desk. Inside, bank records, old case files, and a single scrap of notebook paper. It was taken from Graham's home office. On it were names. 17 of them. 17 girls, all missing over a 20-year period. 6 of them had already been confirmed as Ely family victims. The others unknown. At the very bottom of the list, a name was scribbled in red ink. Noah Harper scheduled. Emily's vision tunneled, her lungs locked up. James caught her before she hit the floor. When she woke, Lang was still there. "I'm sorry," he said, "but you had to see it." Emily sat upright. "I want to help find him." Lang shook his head. "You're not law enforcement." "But I'm bait," she whispered. Lang looked down silent. She pressed. "Let me go back to the house. Alone. Just for one night." "Absolutely not." But James was looking at her, and slowly, very slowly, he nodded. "If we know he's watching," James said, "we let him see what he wants to see." Lang stood. "I'll have surveillance teams across the street. SWAT on standby." "No uniforms," Emily said. "He'll know. He's smart. He's been trained since birth to hide in plain sight." Lang ran a hand through his hair, defeated. "You do this, there's no guarantee he shows up. And if he does, you better pray he doesn't get to you first." Emily met his eyes. "I'm not scared of him." That was a lie. She was terrified. But she'd never let that be the final word. That night she returned to the Harper house alone. The creaking floors felt different now, not old, not tired, but watchful. Like the house remembered. The walls knew. She didn't turn on all the lights, just a few. Enough to be seen from the outside. She poured herself a glass of wine and sat at the kitchen table, pretending to be relaxed, pretending to be bait. The wait was slow, painful. Midnight came. Then 1 a.m. Then 2. At 2:47 her phone buzzed. "Lang secure line. We've got movement at the northeast perimeter. Fence line camera caught someone passing through the tree line." Emily stood slowly. Moved to the hallway. Passed by the family photos they'd rehung too quickly. She stood at the base of the stairs and waited. Then something shifted outside. A small noise. Like a whisper on glass. Emily turned. The backsliding door was unlocked. She knew she had locked it. She stepped back 2 feet, 3. She whispered into the mic pinned beneath her collar. "He's here." Lang's voice crackled back. "Don't engage. Repeat, do not engage." Too late. A shadow moved across the kitchen tile. And then he was there. Graham Ely. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes said everything. He was tall, lean, almost casual. No weapon in sight. Just the air of someone who believed deeply that no one would dare stop him. Emily said nothing. Then quietly, "You left Amy in the well." A flicker of annoyance passed through his face, just enough to show she'd hit something true. "You watched my son." Still no answer. Lang's voice hissed again. "We're 10 seconds out. Hold position." Graham finally spoke. "Legacy," he said. One word. And then he moved. Toward her. Fast. But Emily was ready. She dropped low, turned, ran up the stairs. Behind her, she heard him follow. But not far. Because at the top of the stairs, Lang appeared with his weapon drawn. FBI down. Graham turned. Bolt. Through the hall. Back through the kitchen. A crash. Back window shattered. They followed, but he was already gone. Vanished into the tree line again. Lang cursed. "He's a damn ghost." Ochoa called in the K-9 units. Emily stood on the front porch, trembling. Lang joined her. "You okay?" "No," she said. "Then but I saw his face, clearly this time." Lang nodded. "That's enough for now. You did good." Behind them, James and Noah pulled up in Lang's car. Noah ran to her. She held him tight. "I missed you," he whispered. "I missed you more," she said, holding him tighter than ever before. Lang's phone buzzed. He stepped away to answer. Emily sat with her son on the porch steps. The sky was turning pink. Then Lang returned face tight. "What?" James asked. Lang hesitated. "They found something in the woods, near the bunker site." "What?" "A grave." Emily stood. Lang continued. Fresh dirt, blood, footprints leading in, but only one set coming back out. James's face went pale. You think he took someone? Lang didn't answer. He didn't need to, because in Emily's heart she knew the truth. The tally on the wall hadn't reached 22 yet. But it would, unless they stopped him. 2 hours after Graham Ely vanished into the woods, Lang called an emergency briefing in a mobile command van parked just down the street from the Harper house. The fluorescent lights inside buzzed faintly. No one sat. Everyone was tense. We need to assume he has a shelter, Lang began. He knew how to vanish too fast. He was never going to get caught at the house. Ochoa spread a new map across the table. This is a 3-mile radius of the Harper property. Based on the shallow grave found near the Ely bunker and footprints leading northwest, we believe he's built a second site, possibly years ago. Emily stood by the wall, still holding Noah's jacket against her chest. He's not working alone. Lang nodded slowly. That's what we're starting to believe. Then he pulled out a new piece of evidence, a second journal. Found hours earlier beneath a loose floorboard in the Harper house's attic, hidden in a sealed tin box behind insulation. Lang opened it. The handwriting was slanted precise, different from the first journal, dated from 2010 to 2017. The first entry read, "There will always be new girls. The system works if you follow it. They break eventually, but the best ones they come to believe." Emily flinched. Graham, Lang shook his head. We think it's Ronald Ely's own journal, but there are annotations in a different pen. Someone added comments, like margin notes. Look here. He flipped to a page dated 2014. Ronald's entry, subject the Rummers 16 resisted the regimen, recited her sister's name every morning, nearly ruined the programming. Graham's comment, Amy again. She remembered too much. Uncle never saw the risk. Emily read the line 3 times, then said quietly, they didn't just kill her. She was the experiment. Ronald failed with her. Graham tried again. Ochoa leaned over the map. If Graham picked up where his uncle left off, he's evolved the process. He's using surveillance, planning abductions, picking replacements based on patterns. Lang pointed to one note in the margin of the journal. The child isn't ready, but his mother is. She saw too much already. James, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. Emily? Lang looked grim. He's not done with your family. Emily forced herself to keep breathing. He was watching us for months before we even knew this house had history. Why didn't he take Noah earlier? Ochoa answered. Maybe he wanted to break you first. There was a silence then, the kind that fills a room not with air but with dread. Then one of the techs stepped in with fresh satellite imaging. There's something here, she said. About 1.5 miles from the old Ely bunker. No roads, no driveways. Just a camouflaged roof structure we hadn't caught before. Lang straightened. Send in drones. Within the hour, a surveillance drone hovered above the coordinates. Live feed came through. What it saw chilled them all. A modular structure partially underground. Low flat, covered in leaves and mesh netting. Cables running from a generator into the hillside. A rusted van parked beneath a tarp. And worst of all, a clothesline strung between trees with items drying. Children's clothes. Ochoa whispered, "Oh my God." Emily felt her legs weaken. Lang gave the order, prep extraction team, quiet, no sirens, no chatter. As the team mobilized, Emily walked outside the van to clear her head. And that's when she saw something she hadn't noticed before. One of the old tree trunks near the side of the road carved into its bark was a symbol. A crude triangle inside a circle. It looked almost random. But it wasn't. She had seen it before, in Amy's journal. Lang came out after her. What is it? She pointed. This. It's on page 9 of Amy's journal, next to the drawing of the red room. She said it marked the start of the test. Lang's eyes darkened. So we're not just dealing with torture or conditioning. We're dealing with ritual. Emily nodded. He believes in it, whatever it is. At 4:17 p.m., the extraction team reached the hidden shelter. They went in with night vision and silent weapons. No shots were fired, because no one was home. But the nightmare still waited inside. A row of cots, each labeled with names, some recent, some scratched out. One cot had toys scattered beside it, dolls, a rubber ball, a faded book. Another had restraints nailed to the wall, and on a whiteboard above a desk written in dry erase red, 22. Final phase begins Sunday. No room for weakness. Legacy must be preserved. Lang stood in the center of the room, fists clenched. Sunday is 2 days from now, he said. Emily stepped toward a desk, opening drawers, flipping through folders. Inside one photos. More surveillance images of her and Noah, but this time they were taken inside their home. Bathroom, bedroom, kitchen. James gasped. He had cameras in the house. Lang swore under his breath. Check the electrical, check the vents, he's been in. A field agent opened a trunk against the far wall and found a case filled with IDs. Different names, ages, professions, all fakes. All for the same man, Graham Stetson. In one photo, he was dressed as a pest control technician. In another, a school maintenance worker. He could have been anywhere. They searched for hours. Outside, tracking dogs followed a scent trail for over a mile before losing it near the highway. Lang kicked the dirt. He's gone again. Emily whispered, no, he's preparing. That night, back at the motel, she found herself staring at Amy's drawing again. The crude red room, the triangle inside the circle, the phrase beneath it. The place beneath where they forget who they were. And then Emily remembered something. The first day they'd moved in. Noah had been playing under the house near the crawl space. He'd said something strange. Something she had forgotten. He'd said, there's a little door down there, Mom, but it's too small for grown-ups. At the time, she'd smiled and told him not to crawl under there. But now, she called Lang immediately. We missed something. Under the house. I think Graham made a new red room, one we never found. Lang was at the Harper property in 20 minutes. They opened the crawl space. Low beams, cobwebs, dried mud. And in the far corner, half covered by discarded insulation, a trap door. Just 2 feet wide. Lang pried it open with a crowbar. It dropped down into blackness. They lowered a flashlight and saw stairs, wooden, descending steeply into dirt. Lang turned to her. We go down, now. Emily followed him. The smell hit them halfway down old metal mildew, something wrong. At the bottom was a chamber. Small, just 8 feet wide, 7 feet high. A single light bulb. Red-painted walls. And scratched into the far wall 21 tally marks. And below them, a 20-second mark freshly drawn. Lang's voice broke the silence. He's already chosen. Then they heard it. A soft noise. Not from inside the room. From above. From the crawl space. A metallic sound. The trapdoor closing. Lang lunged back up the stairs, but the hatch had slammed shut. And locked. Emily screamed. Lang. From outside, they heard nothing. Then a faint voice, muffled but unmistakable. Graham. Legacy doesn't run. Legacy roots itself. Lang banged on the ceiling. We're under the damn house, get the team. No response. Then they heard footsteps. Walking across the floorboards above them. Deliberate. Measured. And fading. Emily looked at the wall again. At the 20-second tally. Then down at the floor. Where a single toy, Noah's rubber ball, rolled slowly across the concrete. Lang's hands were bleeding from pounding the trapdoor. Emily's throat was raw from yelling. No one answered. The space beneath the Harper house was soundproofed, not completely, but enough. Enough to muffle screams. Enough to give someone time. Above them, the last footsteps had stopped. No more creaking floorboards. No more mocking voice. Just silence. Lang flicked his flashlight across the red-painted walls. Emily followed the beam with her eyes fighting the rising panic. The 22 tally marks stared back at them like scars. We're not dying down here, she said. Lang was already searching for seams in the walls. He didn't build this as a tomb. This was a control room. That means there's another way out. They found it 5 minutes later, a narrow vent at floor level behind a sheet of false drywall. Lang smashed through it with the heel of his boot. Behind the panel, a tunnel. Dirt-lined, maybe 3 feet tall. Let's go, he said. They crawled for nearly 70 yards through choking dust, ducking under old plumbing lines and roots. Finally, they reached another hatch. Lang kicked it open. They emerged just beyond the backyard fence behind the garden bed where Emily had once tried to plant tomatoes. Now it was overgrown with weeds. As they stood breathing in open air again, a terrible realization hit them both at the same time. Where was Noah? Emily sprinted to the front yard. James was inside the house, alone. He turned as the door slammed open. Emily Jesus. Where's Noah? She cried. James blinked. He's with the FBI, I thought. Ochoa said they were keeping him at the mobile unit. Lang swore, pulled out his phone, dialed. It rang, and rang. No answer. Then a single text appeared on Lang's phone. No name, just a number. It's Sunday. And a photo. Noah. Tied to a chair in what looked like a dark windowless room, red light bleeding down the walls, eyes wide. Alive, but terrified. Lang snapped to action. We need every unit searching the second bunker radius again. That photo isn't old, it's recent. Same clothes he wore this morning. Emily's knees nearly buckled. James caught her. We'll find him. We'll find him. She forced herself to nod. But inside a different part of her, the part that had read Amy's journal over and over, whispered a different truth. This wasn't just about death. This was about belief. Submission. Legacy. Lang's team worked through Sunday morning retracing every coordinate, rescanning the area with heat-seeking drones. At 11:17 a.m., one of the techs called out, "We have a temperature anomaly. Undersoil 20 feet below the silo on the Martin farm." Lang looked up. Martin farm? Ochoa replied, was owned by Ronald Ely's cousin. Property's been abandoned since 2015. Sheriff filed a trespass report there 2 years ago. Guess who they couldn't find? Emily didn't need to guess. 15 minutes later, Lang's convoy was racing down the county highway. They reached the silo just past noon. The structure was rusting, half-collapsed, filled with old hay and dust. But underneath it, beneath a hidden trapdoor in the floor, was a new staircase. Metal, polished, and lit by red bulbs. Lang didn't wait. He descended with Ochoa behind him. Emily followed. They moved fast. At the bottom, a hall, cold concrete walls, markings on the floor like ritual circles hastily drawn in chalk, animal bones in corners, stale air, and a door. Lang turned the handle. It opened into a chamber that mirrored the red room Emily had escaped from, but cleaner, more deliberate. Noah was inside, still bound, gagged, eyes wide. Lang rushed in first, knife out, cutting the ropes. Noah sobbed. Emily ran to him, pulling him into her arms. "I got you, baby, I got you." James appeared seconds later, dropping to his knees. They were together, alive, but not safe yet. Because taped to the wall above Noah's head was another photo. This time of Emily. Sleeping. The timestamp on the image last night. Lang turned sharply. "He was in your room again." Emily stood. "We were bait, this whole time." Ochoa moved through the next hallway. "There's another section." They followed. It led to a room unlike the others. More sterile. Clean walls. And in the center, a chair metal with restraints. A video camera pointed at it. And a monitor across the room showing live feed from inside the Harper house. From inside their living room. Lang's voice was flat. "He's not living in the woods anymore. He's in the house again." James stared at the screen. "There's someone walking past the camera, look." Emily looked. The figure was wearing her clothes. Walking past the sofa, then turning. Not her face. Not exactly. Lang snapped, "Get teams back to the house now. Now." Ochoa was already on the radio. Emily whispered, "It's someone else." Lang turned to her. "It's someone new." Then they saw it. A second chair, hidden in the shadows of the chamber. Small, built for a child, with blood dried beneath it. And on the wall above it, painted in large letters, "The house is never empty." They left fast. Took Noah to a safe location with federal protection. But Emily, Lang, and James returned to the Harper home by 3 p.m. They entered through the back. Careful, guns drawn. Silence. The living room was still. Then Lang moved to the hallway and froze. There on the wall was a photo in a new frame. It wasn't there before. It was of Emily. James. Noah. Taken from outside the bedroom window the night before. Lang tore it down. Behind the frame, etched directly into the drywall, was a sentence. "You live in my home now." Emily backed away. James whispered he never left. That's when they heard it. A noise. Coming from beneath the kitchen floorboards. Scratching. Not rats. Something else. Lang knelt, pulled up the vent grate. He dropped a small scope camera down. What he saw made him drop it instantly. 2 eyes, staring straight back. A face. In the crawl space. Watching. Waiting. Then gone. Lang barked into his mic. Target in the walls. I repeat, he's in the walls. The house exploded with activity. Agents stormed in. Floorboards were ripped up. Drywall torn. Crawl spaces invaded. But again he was gone. Or maybe he never really stayed. That night Emily didn't return to the house. Neither did James. The Harper property was sealed. Crime scene tape across every door. Drones patrolling. Lang looked at her. This is bigger than just him. He's building something to last beyond him. Emily nodded. Legacy. Lang asked, Do you think it's over? She looked at the photo again. The one from inside her house. The one showing her face, but not quite. And then she said quietly, No, he's not trying to finish something. He's trying to pass it on. Emily stared at the photograph until her eyes burned. The woman in the frame was dressed like her, had her hair, her posture, but it wasn't her. Something about the face, something slightly off. Lang paced the porch phone pressed to his ear. James sat on the step arms draped over his knees, watching the twilight settle over the Harper property. The house was no longer theirs. It never had been. I want a full record of every foster home Ronald Ely had access to. Every child he took in even temporarily. Lang barked into the phone. Check for reassignments, changes of name. Anyone who disappeared or re-emerged with a new identity. He ended the call and turned to Emily. This is no longer just a serial case. It's a legacy operation. You were right. He didn't want to finish this. He wanted it to live on, through others. Emily nodded slowly, then looked toward the house. It loomed in the dark like something alive, watching them back. There's something I didn't tell you, she whispered. Lang leaned in. The night before we moved in, I had a dream. A nightmare, really. But it wasn't like other dreams. I saw this house. Exactly. Even the tree in the backyard, the tiles, the creaking step on the porch. I didn't recognize it at the time, but now... Lang narrowed his eyes. Are you saying you dreamed the house before ever seeing it? She nodded. And in the dream, I was underground, in the red room. But I wasn't alone. There was someone else there. A girl. I think she was me. But not me now. Me as a child. James looked up sharply. Emily! No, listen, she said. And that symbol, the triangle inside the circle, I've seen it before. When I was a kid, on a field trip, a barn in North Carolina. My teacher said it was graffiti, but I knew it wasn't. Lang stayed silent, absorbing it. Maybe that's where it starts, she whispered. Childhood, memory implants, conditioning. Maybe Ronald didn't just experiment on his victims. Maybe he seeded them with something. Lang rubbed his temples. So now we're talking generational programming. Emily turned. Not just programming, design. That night, Lang's team pulled property deeds from county archives. The Harper house had been sold 7 times in 25 years. 3 of the owners were dead unsolved deaths. One family simply vanished in 2002. Case still cold. The house had always gone to good people. Stable jobs, young children, ideal families. Exactly the kind of people who wouldn't ask too many questions. But the name behind the sales? A shell company, Multius LLC, registered out of Delaware. Lang ordered a deep dive. It unraveled fast. Multius LLC was tied to a network of over 14 properties across the U.S., each in remote towns, each near old barns, fields, or abandoned silos, and each with a pattern of disappearances or strange deaths, all dating back to 1983. Lang whispered he wasn't the only one. Ronald wasn't working alone. Emily opened a file of faces, dozens of missing children. One photo caught her attention. A girl, maybe 8, pigtails, dimpled cheeks. Amy, she whispered. Amy had a sister. This is her. James leaned in. How can you be sure? Emily pointed. The necklace. It's the same one Amy drew in her journal. And this girl disappeared in 1995, 2 years before Amy. Lang looked closer. We need to go back into the house. One more time. Despite the protests from Ochoa and the other agents, Emily agreed. But she insisted on going alone. Just her and Lang. Noah was staying in a secure facility with James. Emily walked back through the Harper front door at 10:34 p.m. The floor creaked like it remembered her. The air was still. Dead. Lang moved ahead, sweeping the living room with a flashlight. But Emily walked straight toward the basement. To the place beneath the boards. She didn't hesitate. She opened the trapdoor and went down. And when she reached the bottom, she paused. Because something was different. A smell. Not rot. Perfume. Soft, floral, like something from her grandmother's time. And a sound. Low. Delicate. A girl humming. Lang whispered, "That's not possible." But it was there. Clear. Emily moved toward the wall, the one with the 22 tally marks. There was a new mark now. Not carved. Painted. 23. Lang looked shaken. No one's been down here since we sealed it. Emily touched the wall. And that's when it moved. Not physically, not in any way she could explain. But the air changed. Suddenly she saw the wall not as concrete, but as canvas. And beneath the paint, she saw her name, etched faintly, almost scrubbed out. Emily Grace Temple. Lang stepped back. That's not your legal last name. She turned slowly. It was, before I was adopted. I was in the system for 3 years. I never told you. I barely remember it myself. Lang's voice was quiet. Ronald Ely had connections with group homes. He could have had access to you. Emily's voice dropped to a whisper. What if I wasn't just a new homeowner? Lang stared at her. And then it clicked. She was one of them. A child once chosen, removed, forgotten, and now returned. The house wasn't calling her because she was a victim. It was calling her home. She stumbled back, breathing hard. Lang caught her. Emily, look at me. You are not your past. Whatever they did, it doesn't define you. But Emily's mind was racing. Memories flashing. A red room. A woman's voice. A lullaby. Lie still, little one. Forget your name. In the silence, you'll belong again. And in that moment, she understood. The symbol triangle inside a circle, it wasn't just a sigil. It was a cycle. 3 victims. 1 survivor. 1 to carry the memory forward. 1 to rebuild the house. 1 to find the next. Lang pointed his flashlight across the wall. There behind old wiring was a panel. Wooden. Fresh. He pried it open. Behind it a box. Inside the box tapes. Old VHS. Labeled by date. One labeled EGT 1992. Emily froze. Those are my initials. Lang inserted the tape into a nearby player. A static-filled screen came to life. And there in blurry footage was a child. Her. Sitting in the red room. Crying. Calling for someone. Then going silent as a door opened. And a man entered. Not Ronald. Graham. He was younger, teenaged. Wearing a white coat. And smiling. Lang stopped the tape. Emily's face was pale. I don't remember this. Lang whispered, they made sure you didn't. She backed away. I was the test, the first successful test. Lang's voice was firm. Then you're the key to stopping it. Above them, the house groaned. A sound like wood shifting, but then footsteps. Not upstairs. In the walls. Lang shouted, he's here. They scrambled up the steps, burst into the living room. No one. Then Emily saw it the front door. Slightly ajar. She ran to it. Swung it open. And on the porch, sitting neatly in the center, a wedding dress. Folded. Covered in dust. Beneath it a note. Your mother wore this the day she returned to the house. Now it's your turn. Lang whispered he's baiting you. Emily looked out into the night. No, she said. He's inviting me back. The wedding dress was cream white once, but time had yellowed it. Tiny moth holes along the hem beads loosened along the collar. Emily touched it with trembling fingers. She had never seen it before, yet her chest ached with recognition. Lang stepped closer, his gun, still drawn eyes sweeping the surrounding yard. Do you recognize it? Emily nodded. Not from life, from dreams. The porch light above them flickered once, twice, then died. Inside the house, the hallway moaned again. Lang looked to the door. We're not alone. Emily straightened, clutching the folded dress. We never were. They didn't speak as they moved inside. James had taken Noah to the safe house hours earlier. The Harper residence was now under heavy surveillance drones, thermal imaging plainclothes agents stationed down the road. And yet, as they entered, Emily felt the unmistakable presence of intention. This wasn't a man's lair anymore. This was a shrine, to what she wasn't yet sure. They went upstairs, past the bedrooms, toward the locked attic door. It had always been sealed from the inside. Lang inserted the crowbar. It gave way with an old sigh. The attic was colder than expected, not dusty preserved. And in the center of the space, surrounded by pale curtains that hung like skin, a room within the room. Emily walked to the curtained area, fingers brushing aside the thin fabric. Inside a vanity, a mirror, a music box playing though no one had wound it. The same lullaby from her childhood dreams, and above the vanity a photo of her mother. Younger, dressed in the same wedding gown, her face peaceful but her eyes distant. And behind her, nearly out of frame, a man. Ronald Ellie. Emily's breath caught. She was one of them. Lang nodded. And you were born here? No, Emily whispered. I wasn't born here. I was brought back here. She picked up a yellowed letter from the vanity drawer, the paper fragile. Lang leaned over her shoulder. Emily Grace Temple was returned to us on May 9th, 1992, after successful suppression. Her mother has entered room 3 for restoration. Cycle expected to continue within 13 years. Groom selection in progress. Lang's voice was tight. Groom. Emily turned pale. They were breeding us. Generation by generation. Conditioning. Testing thresholds. Suddenly, something slammed below them. Lang turned fast. We're not alone. They descended. But this time, Emily didn't go toward the basement. She went toward the wall behind the staircase where the wallpaper peeled in one unnatural strip. She began tearing at it. Beneath it, bricks, and painted across the bricks a symbol, triangle within a circle. Lang stepped back. You knew it was here. I didn't, but something did. Something inside me. She pressed her hand against the symbol. It sunk inward with a hiss. And the bricks began to move. Behind them a tunnel. Long, curved, lined with faded blue tiles. Lang stepped in first. The air was humid. Smelled like flowers and rot. Emily followed. They passed photos black and white framed along the walls like a museum. Families, brides, children. Lang paused at one. This photo's from 1951. That's this house. Emily's voice was hoarse. Then it started long before Ronald. They reached the end of the tunnel after 10 minutes. A final door awaited. Steel, rusting, no handle. Lang tried to push. Locked. But beside it a keypad. And above it engraved, "The mother always remembers." Emily stared at it. Then typed in 6 numbers. Her birthday. 9-2. The lock clicked. The door opened inward with a groan. And they entered room 3. Lang froze first. Emily did not. The room was a theater. Literally a small auditorium with rows of seats, velvet curtains, and a stage. On the stage a chair, and seated in it perfectly still, a woman. Old eyes closed, wearing the wedding dress. Not the one from the porch, an older version. But the same pattern, same veil. Emily stepped forward slowly, her heart in her throat. The woman opened her eyes, pale, milk-glazed, but aware. She smiled faintly. "Emily," she said. Emily stopped. Lang raised his gun. The woman raised her hand gently. "Don't. He's not here. Not now." Emily's voice cracked. "Who are you?" The woman tilted her head. "I'm who you left behind. The part of you they kept. The mother you never knew." Lang's jaw clenched. "You're not her." "No," the woman said softly. "I was. But the house changes you. I've lived in its roots, breathed its dreams. You'll understand soon." Emily whispered, "Why me?" The woman gestured around them. "Because you survived. Most don't. You carried it, Emily, in your blood, in your sleep. And now you've brought it back." Lang stepped forward. "What is this place?" "A church," the woman answered. "A machine. A womb. It doesn't matter what you call it. It remembers." Emily shook her head. I'm ending this. The woman nodded almost peacefully. I know. That's what it wants too. Emily stopped. What? The woman's pale eyes locked onto hers. It's tired, Emily. The legacy has fractured. You were its last hope, but you were born imperfect. You broke free. And now, it wants to die. Lang moved fast. Back away, now. But the woman didn't resist. She simply closed her eyes and smiled. Tell the house I forgive it, she said. Then she slumped. Gone. Lang moved to her side, checked for a pulse. None, just silence. Emily stared down at her. It wasn't grief. It wasn't closure. It was something deeper. An ache that pulsed like memory, the kind passed through blood, not words. Then the lights in the theater blinked. Once, twice, and died. Lang turned on his flashlight. But the exit door behind them was gone. In its place, a mirror. Emily stepped forward, saw herself in the reflection, and behind her dozens of children, all standing, all silent. Some were from photos, some from Amy's journal, some she could not name but knew. And in the center, holding the hands of two others, was a young version of herself. The mirror pulsed and shattered. Lang grabbed Emily, pulled her back, and where the glass had been now stood another tunnel, this one lined with red wallpaper. The floor beneath it cracked and glowing faintly. Emily turned to Lang. I think we're inside the house's memory now. He nodded, and they stepped forward. Together. The tunnel stretched like an artery pulsing faintly with reddish light that throbbed through the wallpapered walls. Emily and Lang moved slowly, the silence between them, heavy, not with fear, but anticipation. They weren't chasing the truth anymore. The truth was coming for them. The hallway twisted and narrowed until they reached a chamber sealed by a thick iron door, engraved with a phrase, "The architect awaits." Lang raised an eyebrow. Ready? Emily's voice was low. I think I've always been. The door opened at their touch. Inside was not what they expected. No concrete, no rot. Instead, a library. Endless shelves, books bound in leather cloth human skin. The walls were lined with names, dates, diagrams of rooms. Rooms in different houses. Rooms not yet built. Lang stepped forward, scanning the architecture blueprints. These are blueprints for homes all across the country. Some haven't been built yet. Emily moved to a pedestal in the center. On it, a black book with no title. She opened it, and her hands began to tremble. Inside were records of every child, every test, every room, including subject EGT 1992, status partial regression, result long-term memory fragmentation, phase 2 deemed unviable due to resistance, reassigned to external placement. Notes will carry latent link, potential trigger at adulthood upon re-entry. Lang read over her shoulder. They knew you would come back. Emily whispered I was designed to. Behind them, footsteps echoed. They turned. A man stepped into view. Tall, gray hair, clean suit, movements precise. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like an architect. And he was smiling. Emily, he said, you've come home. Lang stepped in front. Who are you? The man ignored him. You've seen pieces, he said to her, but not the whole. Emily took a step forward. You built this place. The man inclined his head. I did not build a house, I built a memory engine, a vessel. Each generation added a layer fear-obedient silence, but we needed more. Lang tightened his grip on the pistol. More what? The man turned his pale eyes on him. More fidelity. Memories passed through trauma are the sharpest, so we constructed houses, made of pain, every room, a test, every victim, a page. He turned to Emily. You survived your cycle, not because you escaped, because you remembered. Emily clenched her fists. I didn't want to remember. But you did, the man said gently, and that means you're ready. He raised one hand. The room around them shifted. Shelves melted. Books disappeared. And they were back in the basement of the Harper house. Only this time the bodies weren't in barrels. They stood alive, yet not. The previous victims, unmoving, watching. Lang raised his gun. Emily, don't look at them. But she couldn't look away. Each face was a puzzle piece of her own. A child who laughed like she used to. A girl who had her smile. A boy with the same scar on his temple. The man's voice echoed. You are all of them. Their pain made you, and your pain will free them. Suddenly the bodies stepped forward. Lang fired once, twice. The bullets passed through them like mist. They closed in around Emily, and instead of attacking, they hugged her, embraced her. She screamed, because with each touch she remembered memories that were not hers alone. A child crying under floorboards, a girl drugged in a white room, a mother screaming as the house whispered lullabies. It poured into her like a flood. Her knees buckled. Lang grabbed her, shouting her name. The man stepped forward. The house will burn, Emily, but not until you take its heart. He reached into his coat and removed a small square object, a box, wooden. She recognized it immediately. The same one from her earliest childhood nightmare. I left this in your crib, the man said. You wouldn't stop crying, but when you touched this, you slept. He held it out. Emily stared at it. Inside, she knew, was the key. To destroy the house, or to complete it. Lang growled. Don't touch it, Emily. But she already had. The moment her fingers closed around the box, everything changed. They were no longer in the basement. They were inside the room she was born in. Hospital lights, monitors, and her mother lying still. A man, the same one, standing at her side. You will carry it, he told the baby. You will return when the house is ready. Lang's voice cut through the illusion. Emily, fight it. Emily dropped the box, screamed, and everything shattered. She was back on the floor. Sweating, shaking, Lang knelt beside her. But the man was gone. Only the box remained. Emily lifted it again and opened it. Inside, a single slip of paper, handwritten. To end the cycle, burn the original route. The first house, where room 0 lies. Lang whispered, There's more. Emily nodded slowly. And we're going there. Lang stood, where? She looked at the paper's corner. A single word. Willoughby, Georgia. Lang whistled low. That's where Ronald Ely was born. Emily stared into the dark, then whispered, That's where this began, and where it ends. Willoughby, Georgia didn't show up on any modern map. It wasn't even listed in archived census records after 1955. But when Lang cross-referenced older geological surveys, one thing stood out: a property deed tied to Ely Holdings, Inc., purchased in 1938. A large parcel of land. No roads led to it anymore. Emily sat in the back of the SUV as Lang drove them through the last leg of their journey off paved roads, through forests thick with hanging moss and shadow. The trees seemed older than time. The deeper they drove, the worse Emily's head throbbed. Each turn in the path brought a new memory, not hers, but someone's. A woman being dragged into a white room, a boy screaming as the door was sealed. It wasn't déjà vu. It was ancestral memory embedded deep in her DNA, unlocked now by proximity to whatever still waited at Willoughby. Lang spoke quietly. There's no satellite signal this far out. Radio's gone too. Emily didn't respond. She was focused on what she saw ahead. A chimney broken and covered in vines. Then the outline of an old house foundation. Lang parked. They stepped out. The air was still. No birds. No wind. Just the quiet pressure of a place the world had forgotten on purpose. They passed the cracked walkway leading toward the remnants of the house. Trees had pushed through its frame. The second floor had long collapsed. But one part of the structure remained intact. The cellar doors. Emily walked to them and knelt. The wood had not rotted, not like the rest. Lang helped her pull them open. A metal stairwell descended into total darkness. Emily clicked on her flashlight. What's the plan? Lang asked. We go down, she said. We finish this. The stairs dropped deep, much farther than a simple cellar should. Lang estimated at least 4 stories underground. The metal was cold under their feet. The walls soon changed from stone to smooth concrete. And at the bottom, a corridor lit by flickering fluorescent tubes. On the wall, painted letters. Room 0 authorized access, only genetic match required. Lang looked at her. That means you. Emily didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, and the door without touch slid open. Inside was a circular chamber. Unlike the others they'd seen, this room was alive, pulsing. Wires ran through the walls like veins, and in the center a cradle. floating, suspended by magnetic coils. Inside it, a preserved fetus. No more than 12 weeks developed. And yet its form was hers. Lang backed up. What in God's name? Emily stared, frozen, because on the wall above the cradle was a screen, and a single line of text blinked. Welcome back, subject EGT 1992. Cycle reinitialization available. Lang lifted his gun. We're destroying it. But Emily raised her hand. No, not yet. She stepped to the control panel beside the cradle. Touch the screen. A second line appeared. Do you wish to complete the legacy? Below it, yes, no. She hovered her hand over no, but didn't press it. Instead, she asked aloud, why does it need me? The screen blinked, then changed. Because you survived outside the loop. You are the anomaly. You can finish what others failed to carry. Lang shouted, that's exactly why you shouldn't. Emily, they want to manipulate you again. Emily turned to him. No, I want to understand. She pressed a new button on the screen archive logs. And then she saw it all. The first room, built in 1939 after experiments in trauma-based conditioning during early wartime psychology studies. Ronald Ellie's father, a behavioral theorist, pioneered memory suppression and control through architectural triggers, floor plans that induced fear, then rewired identity. They tested it on their own family first, when Ronald was only 7. Lang read over her shoulder. These houses were never homes. They were experiments. Emily scrolled further. Each name was a test subject, each house a different variable, and each failure was sealed in concrete. Until Emily. She was the only one who resisted, escaped, and returned her presence, reactivating the dormant system. Lang said quietly, they weren't burying bodies. They were planting memories. Emily nodded, and I was the seed that grew. She closed the file, then reached into her coat pocket. She pulled out a metal cylinder, the thermal detonator Lang had given her in case of total compromise. She placed it at the base of the cradle. Lang's eyes widened. Wait, you sure? Emily pressed the timer. 3 minutes. I'm done being a story someone else writes. They turned and ran. Up the stairs. The house above trembled. When they emerged, the air had changed. Clouds had darkened unnaturally. Emily and Lang ran for the tree line, and then the ground split. Room 0 collapsed inward, the scream of metal and memory rising as it imploded. Not just a building dying, a system unraveling. Fire burst from the earth. Lang shielded Emily. Then, silence. They turned back. The chimney was gone. The land flat, as if it had never been built upon. Lang looked at her. You did it. Emily stared for a long time, then shook her head. No, I ended this version. But if they built it once, they can build it again. Lang hesitated. Then what now? Emily pulled a single chip from her pocket. The archive logs. I leak the data, she said. Every blueprint, every name. Let people see it. Let the truth live outside the floorboards. Lang exhaled, then nodded. You ready for that? Emily looked up at the dark sky. Not really, but I think I was born to be. 6 weeks later, Lang stared at the screen as it blinked for the 3rd time that morning. Restricted server blocked, access denied. The files, all the archive logs from Room 0 were being systematically erased from every upload portal they tried. VPNs, the dark web encrypted backchannels. All burned, all shut down. Every time we upload, someone's waiting, Lang muttered. Emily stood by the window, arms crossed. She hadn't slept. Not in days. I knew it wouldn't be that easy, she said quietly. They were holed up in an abandoned ranger cabin near Idaho's Sawtooth Mountains, far off grid, surrounded by frost and silence. After destroying Room 0, they'd tried going public. First to the press, then to independent researchers, then to whistleblower channels. But each contact disappeared within hours. Emails bounced back. Phones went dead. One journalist, Monica Tate, agreed to meet them. The night before she was due to arrive, her car exploded outside her apartment. No one reported it. No one investigated. Emily stared at the mountains. They've built another room already, she said. Lang turned from the laptop. We destroyed the route. They had backups. We saw what they were capable of. I guarantee it wasn't just Georgia. She opened her journal. It was full now. Sketches, floor plans, maps of memory-based architecture from the Ely files. I think we were wrong, she said. Lang raised an eyebrow. About what? We thought the houses were about individual trauma, about isolating memories and using fear to suppress or rewrite them. He nodded slowly. Right. But what if that was just phase 1? She showed him a map not of houses but cities, each marked with black dots. Each dot overlaid with known disappearances, real estate developments, or military contracts from the last 30 years. They've expanded, she whispered. This wasn't just about testing trauma. They were engineering control through environment. Lang stepped closer. These cities, Newbridge, Fremont, Selden's Hill, they were all former government projects or failed company towns. What are you saying? Emily looked at him. I think they've begun scaling Room Zero into cities, neighborhoods, entire communities designed to suppress certain kinds of memory, political dissent, whistleblower data, identity, collective resistance. Lang's face darkened. You think there are more Emilys out there? She nodded. Dozens, maybe more. A beep interrupted them. Lang turned back to the laptop. A signal had been received. Not an upload this time. A broadcast. Encrypted. It came from a private IP block originating in British Columbia. He opened it. A single line of text. I remember the blue wallpaper. Lang looked at Emily. Sound familiar? Her skin went cold. She nodded. It was the wallpaper in my room. My real one. Before everything. The message blinked again. They think I forgot. I didn't. If you're real, meet me in Breckham 48 hours. You're not the only one anymore. Lang looked up. What's Breckham? A ghost town, Emily said. Abandoned in '99 after a mining collapse, or at least that's what the records say. She grabbed her coat. Lang hesitated. You think it's a trap? Emily gave a hollow smile. Everything's a trap. 2 days later, Breckham, British Columbia. They arrived under heavy fog. The town was worse than abandoned. It looked sealed, like someone had tried to erase it. Windows covered in steel plates. Streets overgrown. No birds, no sound. They found the meeting spot, a broken-down general store on the corner of Main and 2nd. Inside, nothing but dust and the lingering smell of burned paper. Lang swept the room. No one here. Emily checked her watch. 10 minutes early. They waited. At exactly 4 p.m., a sound behind them, a soft mechanical whir. Lang drew his gun. But the figure that emerged wasn't armed. She was young, maybe 17, wearing a hospital gown under a heavy coat, dark circles under her eyes, and on her left wrist, the same burned barcode Emily remembered from childhood. The girl spoke barely above a whisper. I thought I was the last. Emily stepped forward. So did I. They sat together. The girl's name was Joanna. She'd grown up in a town called Helmsport, 2 provinces south. Her earliest memories were of underground chambers, identical rooms, and strangers watching her through glass. But like Emily, she'd been relocated, adopted before she turned 6. She'd always felt something was wrong. She couldn't remember her parents. Had dreams of waking up in the wrong bed, hearing voices in the walls. Then one day she touched a red door in a burned building, and suddenly everything came back. She'd spent the last year searching, digging into old utility records, tracing company names linked to Ely Holdings. She'd found the same map. The same pattern. Emily asked softly, how many? Joanna looked up. 4 I've found. Me, you 2 others. 1 in Oregon, 1 in Nova Scotia. But there were more. Where are they? Gone. Emily closed her eyes. The pieces were connecting. What she had feared and what Room Zero had hinted was true. The children weren't meant to survive. They were designed to carry fragments of the entire system like living hard drives. When the houses were shut down or destroyed, the system didn't collapse, it migrated. And now, it was waking up. That night they built a fire in the center of Breckham. Joanna handed Emily a folder she'd found in the basement of an abandoned school, part of the original room design architecture. One note stood out. Final expansion phase, memory synthesis via shared trauma. Projected completion date, 2025. Lang read the line and asked, what does that mean? Joanna looked at them. They don't need houses anymore. They've moved to digital rooms. AI immersive training environments, virtual suppression networks. They figured out how to rewrite in real time. Emily stared into the flames. Room Zero wasn't just the beginning. It was the prologue. The final page had yet to be written, but she knew how it ended. With fire. The plan was simple. Burn the last house. The original house, the first true room, long before Room Zero, before Breckham, before the system became digital. Its floorboards were old-growth pine laid in 1937, untouched since the initial trials. It had been hidden not in plain sight but in history. Emily Lang and Joanna found it through a nearly forgotten document in the Canadian archives. A land deed issued to a Dr. E. Hargrove, an early alias of Ely's grandfather for Lot 71, in a remote part of eastern Montana. No roads led there anymore. Just forest. And a cold wind that never stopped moving. They hiked 3 hours in near silence. Emily felt it with every step, a pull like gravity inverted. Lang carried the canisters. Joanna the map. Emily carried the last fragment of her memory, a red marble from a game she didn't know she'd played, found in the lining of her childhood coat. She didn't remember putting it there. But when she held it, the house appeared in her mind. Room by room. Smell by smell. The last floorboard was under the nursery crib. She knew it with certainty, not logic. DNA, deep knowing. They arrived at dusk. The house stood as it had for nearly 90 years, weathered but untouched, as if preserved by some pact with silence. No birds, no insects, just the old wind and the waiting wood. They approached slowly. Lang kicked open the rotting front door. Inside, dust in waves like ash from a long-dead fire. Joanna stepped in second. Emily last. The house breathed. A low exhale as the door shut behind them, not slammed shut itself. Lang raised his weapon. "We're not alone." Emily nodded. "We were never alone in here." They moved room by room. The kitchen still had broken cups on the counter. The bathroom mirror reflected a different angle than reality. In the basement, the air hummed with low electrical tones, though no wires existed. And finally, the nursery, exactly as Emily remembered it in dreams. Blue wallpaper with faded stars. A crib. A rocking chair. A rug shaped like a cloud. Emily stepped in, heart-hammering. "Help me move it," she whispered. Lang and Joanna lifted the crib, and beneath it the last floorboard, slightly lighter than the rest. Undisturbed, Emily knelt. She pried it loose, and underneath, not dirt, not concrete, a screen, still powered, still warm, and a glowing white cursor blinking on black. Lang crouched. "How is this running?" Emily touched it. A prompt appeared. "Welcome back, subject EGT 1992. One final sequence remaining. Do you wish to remember everything?" Lang backed up. "Don't do it, it's bait." Joanna said nothing. She looked at Emily, then quietly stepped away, as if sensing the moment was not hers to share. Emily hovered her hand over the screen. Tears welled. "I've spent my life in the dark, every memory given to me like breadcrumbs." She pressed yes, and the house shook. Images flashed in her mind. Not dreams, not ideas, true memory. She saw her real mother, a kind woman, a scientist, killed during early trials when she tried to pull Emily out. She saw herself cloned repeatedly, version after version failing. She was number 17. She saw the truth of the rooms, not just experiments, but memory prisons, designed to test how much identity could be rewritten before the body rebelled. She saw hundreds of children, some grown, some never made it past age 3. She saw her own name deleted from official records by the age of 6. And worst of all, she saw herself another version smiling, whispering something into a recorder. Even if they burn the floors, the memory survives in flesh. No. She collapsed forward. Lang caught her. Joanna knelt beside them. "What did you see?" Emily whispered everything. "I wasn't born. I was engineered." Lang nodded slowly. "Then this house isn't just the origin, it's a replicator." Joanna looked at the screen. It blinked again. "Do you wish to destroy all rooms? Warning, action irreversible. All subjects will lose cohesion." Lang whispered cohesion. Emily answered. "They mean the other versions of me. Across states, towns, experiments. If I do this, they'll all die." Joanna grabbed her hand. "You're not killing them. You're setting them free." Emily stared at the screen. Time slowed. She saw herself hundreds of versions trapped in concrete, in memory loops, in trauma triggers buried under foundations. She pressed yes, and the house screamed. Fire exploded from every wall. The ceiling collapsed. Lang grabbed Joanna and pulled her out the door. Emily stayed. The house spoke to her not with words but with images. The system trying one last manipulation, a voice like her mother's. A promise of love. A future. A child. But she smiled. No more lies. The last board burned under her feet. And then she vanished. Days later. Lang stood with Joanna on a cliff overlooking the land. The house was gone. No debris. No smoke. As if it had never been. On Joanna's wrist, the barcode had faded. Gone. Lang pulled a photograph from his coat. Emily. He kissed it once. Then tossed it into the wind. Epilogue. You read this in a quiet room. You're alone. Maybe it's your living room. Or your bedroom. Or a place you've been before but don't remember exactly. You glance at the wall. It seems off. Like a shadow where none should be. You feel a strange scent beneath the floorboards. Not rot. Not mold. Just a hint of something old. The boards creak louder than usual tonight. And in the corner of your eye, just for a moment, you think you see someone standing, watching. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, stay tuned for more fictional thrillers and mysteries. Like, comment, and let me know. Which twist shocked you the most? Is Emily really dead, or is she still watching from below?